It sounds like your wife cheated on you with a coworker who's been making your job difficult. Turns out this coworker is also married. You decided to team up with the coworker's wife to get back at them financially. At the Christmas party, I caught my wife Julie with my coworker Marcus kissing on the patio. Marcus and I work in the same department, but I haven't confronted Julie yet. Based on what I've seen and the circumstances, I suspect they started their affair after the last Christmas party, but they've been good at hiding it. Before the party, Marcus and I didn't get along well at work. In my first week, I'd automated some of Marcus's tasks using my software skills, impressing everyone except Marcus. He tried to find faults in my work but couldn't. Despite being criticized by management, Marcus was popular for gossiping, while I preferred to focus on my work and keep to myself. I was content with my small circle of friends and my wife. 2 months later, at the annual Christmas party, Marcus asked my wife to dance and she agreed, despite knowing our history. I couldn't refuse, and when she returned, she justified it by saying she didn't want to be rude. I realized she was right, it was just a dance, and I eventually forgot about it. I got busy at work and never imagined that my wife would be fooling around with the person who had been causing me trouble for a year. At this year's Christmas party, I showed up with my wife again. She danced with some of my female colleagues before joining Marcus on the dance floor. I was taken aback, but I had to act cool about it. Other colleagues noticed and exchanged glances, knowing about the tension between Marcus and me. Noah commented on Marcus not bringing his wife, implying he wanted to flirt with others' wives. I was flustered, but Noah apologized, saying he was just trying to lighten the mood. The discussion turned to whether Marcus was married, with suspicions that he was hiding it to pursue younger colleagues. Despite Noah insisting Marcus was married, his prankster reputation made others doubt him. Feeling suffocated watching Julie dance with Marcus, I went to the patio for fresh air. Later, I heard footsteps and giggles, so I hid in a corner. Soon, Marcus and my wife entered the patio, kissing passionately, with Marcus's hand inside her dress. My wife was holding his face with both her hands, lost in pleasure. I wanted to confront them right then and there, but instead I pulled out my phone and recorded everything. It was dark, but the dim light managed to capture the scene. Marcus pushed her away, saying we don't have much time before your husband comes looking for you. He then suggested putting on a show, and she giggled, getting into position. Everything got recorded, and I felt numb. After a janitor interrupted them, I left and went to crash at my friend's place, pouring out my heart until morning. When I checked my phone, I saw a missed call from Julie, likely just a courtesy call. This afternoon, I returned home to find her still sleeping, probably sore from last night's activities. Feeling hurt and outraged, I retreated to my study to plan my revenge. Scouring Marcus's social media accounts proved fruitless, as they were all private, and I didn't even know his wife's name, let alone if she existed. If anyone has tips for finding a stranger on social media, I'd appreciate the help. As for the common question of whether there were signs I missed, I'm not sure. Perhaps I was just too trusting. A few months after the first Christmas party, around springtime, I was scrolling through my Facebook feed. When I noticed Marcus's comments on Julie's posts, I was surprised. I asked her if she was in touch with him, and she said no, he was just a Facebook friend like thousands of others. She explained that Marcus had sent her a friend request after that party, and she accepted it, thinking nothing of it. However, I became more vigilant and started checking her profile more frequently. I saw Marcus's overly complimentary comments on all her photos and questioned her about it. She dismissed it, saying it was just one of many comments she received. Despite not being a social media influencer, Julie was quite active online, and her profile was open to the public. I pointed out that Marcus wasn't like the other strangers who commented on her pictures. We weren't on good terms at work, and he didn't even speak to me there. I couldn't understand why he was so interested in my wife's pictures. Her sarcastic response angered me, and I expressed my frustration, emphasizing that Marcus had been trying to undermine me at work. He had even succeeded a couple of times, leading to severe criticism from our manager. Marcus was also known for ingratiating himself with our manager, manipulating situations to his advantage. Julie was well aware of the office politics, yet she allowed Marcus's flirtatious comments to go unchecked in her inbox. This continued until July of this year, when my department landed a new project that required me to travel to the client's office in Seattle twice a month. With work becoming hectic, I had little time to dwell on other matters. Marcus and I were both part of the same team with similar job responsibilities, but he always seemed to have more free time, often loitering in the lobby while I remained immersed in my work. Despite the overwhelming workload, I saw it as a chance to learn and push myself hard. During this time, I noticed Julie becoming emotionally distant from me. I attributed it to my work commitments and frequent travel. Trying to compensate, I took her to fancy dinners and showered her with expensive gifts, but she never complained or acknowledged the growing rift between us, which troubled me deeply. I pleaded with my manager to reduce my work trips or alternate them between me and Marcus, but he refused, claiming I was better suited to handle the client. Frustrated, I pointed out that despite my skills, Marcus consistently received accolades while I faced criticism. He made empty promises of recommending me for the next promotion, but his insincerity was evident. Regarding Julie, when she finally woke up from her prolonged slumber one evening, she questioned why I had left her alone at the party. I explained that I thought she was enjoying herself with her new friend, Marcus. She laughed it off, dismissing my jealousy as we talked. However, inside, I was seething, planning to confront them without warning. My attempts to locate Marcus's wife have been fruitless, even with his surname. Considering fishing out Marcus's address from the company's database and confronting him at home, as I see no other viable option. Any suggestions are welcome. Update: some of you suggested it's challenging to find someone without a name or handle on social media. I was almost set on visiting Marcus's house until my friend reminded me about my colleague Noah. I felt that Noah might have information about Marcus's wife that could assist me, despite my dislike for his gossipy nature. The next day at work, I struck up a casual conversation with him, subtly inquiring about Marcus's wife. With a smirk, Noah hinted at my likely interest in her, especially after the events of the previous night's party. Although annoyed by his manner, I hesitated to ask directly about her name. Sensing my desperation, Noah offered to provide her name and possibly her contact information through his sister. Excitedly, I accepted his offer. Using her name, I searched for her on various social media platforms and found her on Twitter. With her professional details listed, I messaged her explaining the urgency of discussing her husband's actions. She responded promptly, providing her phone number and agreeing to meet after work. Her confident and composed response intrigued me. Upon meeting her, I was captivated by her aura and evident intelligence. It baffled me how someone could cheat on such a remarkable woman. As I shared the details and showed her the incriminating video, tears welled up in her eyes, yet she remained composed. She expressed shock upon learning that spouses had been invited to the office party, contrary to what Marcus had told her. When asked if she had ever doubted him, she admitted to catching him sexting other women on 2 occasions but had forgiven him as she deemed it not severe enough to warrant serious concern. I informed her that Marcus has been deceitful, claiming to be single while gaining a reputation as a flirt in the office, often involving himself with younger colleagues. In response, she cursed him vehemently, expressing her desire to teach him a lesson. I confessed that I hadn't formulated any specific plans yet, but I was determined to make them pay for their actions. In a joint effort, we devised a revenge plan to bring justice to Julie and Marcus for their humiliation. Sandra and I pretended to be oblivious to their affair, allowing them to believe their lies about late-night gatherings with friends. We feigned business with our work, showing indifference to their actions. Leveraging our co-ownership of the house, I craftily updated the documents to transfer sole ownership to myself, having Julie sign them under the guise of routine paperwork. I subtly delayed Julie's departure to meet her lover by creating distractions and had her unknowingly sign over her house ownership rights. Meanwhile, Sandra drained their joint bank account, sold Marcus's car, and leased out her own property to a new tenant, securing a restraining order against Marcus on the premises. I discreetly canceled all the cards Julie relied on for financial support. Towards the end of our retaliation, Sandra deceitfully arranged a 5-day couple's holiday trip to Florida as a birthday present for Marcus. However, she fabricated a last-minute work conflict, forcing him to cancel the trip, leaving them both stranded and clueless. Marcus quickly proposed that he could take the trip with his male friend, and Sandra agreed due to the non-refundable nature of the package. Meanwhile, I fabricated a story for Julie, claiming a 15-day work trip and checked into a hotel during this period. Julie, in turn, concocted a tale about attending a long-lost school friend's wedding in Vegas, which I found suspicious but played along with. During Marcus and Julie's vacation in Florida, bought by Sandra, we executed our plan. Sandra emptied their joint account, sold Marcus's car, rented out her own house, and obtained a restraining order against him. Meanwhile, I canceled Julie's cards, packed her belongings into storage, and prepared updated property papers and a restraining order to be delivered upon her return. However, Marcus continued to harass me at work, posting about his affair with my wife and humiliating me in front of colleagues. I recorded his behavior and shared it with HR, threatening to expose the workplace harassment on social media. Faced with potential negative publicity, HR promised Marcus's termination upon his return from the trip. I also resigned immediately, leaving a letter for Julie detailing the truth about Marcus's marital status and our betrayal. Sandra and I bonded over our shared experience of betrayal. I praised Sandra's intelligence and career success, contrasting it with my wife's perceived laziness and dissatisfaction with her part-time job. The thought of my wife's potential dilemma amuses me, now that she'll have to work full-time as she no longer has me to provide for her, and her unemployed lover cannot support her either. Sandra discreetly slipped Marcus's credit card away just before his departure for the trip. He would realize it's missing only after reaching Florida, which promises to be quite amusing. With Marcus having no access to cards and Julie's card blocked, the situation in Florida is bound to be chaotic. Sandra even called the hotel to cancel the bookings just before Marcus and Julie were scheduled to arrive, denying them any chance of a refund. Despite the financial loss, we're more than willing to sacrifice it for the pleasure of watching these losers suffer through their ill-fated trip. Sandra and I have decided against divorcing these losers, as we don't want to spend any more money on them. If they want to end the marriage, they'll have to foot the bill, though that seems highly unlikely at this point. We've updated our wills to exclude them from our assets, ensuring they won't inherit anything by default as our spouses. Sandra and I are planning to move to Seattle to start a fresh life. I've received a lucrative job offer from a client company, doubling my previous salary. Sandra, on the other hand, wants to take a break from work and enjoy life for a while, thanks to her substantial savings. Our belongings are already en route to Seattle, and by the time Marcus and Julie return, we'll be off on a month-long holiday to the Caribbean, soaking up the sun. Life with Sandra, a woman who matches my intellect and curiosity, has rejuvenated me. Although we're not envisioning a forever together, we're enjoying our time to the fullest until we can. It's on to the next adventure with her by my side. Now on to the next story, my wife's affair with her professor, and how we exposed their texts and videos during her big presentation, resulting in their expulsion. I discovered that she was a dentist, having recently graduated and excelled in dental school. Despite my career as a contractor not bringing in as much income as hers, I was determined to support her. Our shared love for classical music brought us closer together, and attending orchestral performances became a cherished activity for us. After a few months, we decided to move in together, initially residing in an apartment. As our relationship deepened over the following year, we upgraded to a townhouse with our combined income. Despite her successful dental practice, I took on the bulk of the mortgage payments as my business began to thrive. A year after settling into our townhouse, I proposed to her during a classical music concert on the anniversary of our first date, and she joyfully accepted. We quickly organized a ceremony and were married shortly after. Initially, our marriage was blissful, with me spoiling her with luxury items and her reciprocating despite my protests. However, things took a turn when she learned that her education was deemed outdated for her position, requiring her to pursue further education or continuing education to remain qualified. I expressed concerns about relying solely on my income, but she reassured me that her practice would endure. Eventually, after some discussion, we reached a compromise. She would return to school while I supported us financially. Despite the adjustments, it didn't seem like a significant issue at the time. However, this adjustment meant that we both had to tighten our belts a bit. She enrolled in school full-time, assuring me she would complete her program within a year. She explained that once finished, she wouldn't need further continuing education for another 5 years, as she could fulfill it gradually. I agreed, assuming it would be manageable given my steady income. However, unforeseen financial troubles arose. First, we lost a couple of significant contracting jobs, which I hoped to recover from. Then, I uncovered an employee embezzling company funds, leading to costly legal proceedings. I had to navigate these challenges alone as my wife was not actively involved. During this tumultuous period, I noticed changes in her behavior. She became distant and uncommunicative, spending nights at school under the guise of seeking assistance from her professor. However, when I inquired about her studies, she remained evasive, citing dental techniques as her focus. As our relationship deteriorated, our intimacy dwindled, with excuses of fatigue becoming more frequent. Even on weekends, she secluded herself in her office to study, leaving me feeling rejected and puzzled. Venting my frustrations to a friend, he suggested the possibility of infidelity, a notion I initially dismissed. However, as suspicions grew, I contemplated investigating her texts and recordings for evidence of betrayal. One night, while my wife was in the shower, I noticed her phone left out, seemingly tempting fate. Curiosity getting the better of me, I couldn't resist peeking. To my dismay, I discovered flirtatious texts exchanged with someone named Professor B, accompanied by heart emojis. It was evident she was planning rendezvous, even going as far as expressing intentions to spend time away from home. Determined to uncover the truth, I embarked on a search to identify this mysterious professor. After scouring school records, I unearthed Professor Burns, a prominent figure in the dental division. Suddenly, everything clicked into place, her emotional distance and aversion to intimacy. Though hurt by the revelation, I resolved to confront the issue head-on. With a plan swiftly forming in my mind, I seized the opportunity during her upcoming presentation for the Dental Academy project. Manipulating her computer, I replaced her intended content with evidence of her infidelity. Despite her reluctance, I insisted on attending the presentation, taking a seat in the front row. As she began her presentation, her initial smile morphed into sheer horror as the incriminating messages and videos flashed before the audience. Confronted with undeniable proof, she broke down, attempting to justify her actions by claiming happiness with Professor Burns. Refusing to accept excuses, I denounced her actions, branding her a cheater. The fallout was swift. Professor Burns was swiftly ousted from his position, while my wife faced consequences of her own. Not only was she dismissed from her job, but she was also blacklisted from other universities due to academic misconduct. Despite the emotional toll, I stood firm in my decision, severing ties with her and kicking her out of our home. Though challenging, I harbored no regrets, determined to uphold my principles in the face of betrayal.